we created an award where we have categorized it as fail forward. And FAIL is an acronym for us that stands for First Attempt in Learning. And I love it because the notion is to remind everyone that, you have to take risks. You are going to, sometimes kill it and it'll work out great. And sometimes you'll have to learn, grow, take the feedback or take the experience and figure out what you're going to do differently next time. And we realized in our culture at work, we needed to award that. We needed to, because we had so many people that were just trying to be very high performing and execute so precisely that it was holding them back, this concept of experimentation or, well, what happens if it doesn't work out? Like how you recover from it, it drives a lot of loyalty. So we've had a great, a really great impact from introducing that award at work.
Welcome to the Warriors at Work show. This is Jeannie Coomber, your guide and host. This is a show for men and women in the workplace who want to move from the predictable to the potent. This is your weekly dose of inspiration with an edge. I talk with CEOs and shamans, sports marketing executives and therapists. All of us are like-minded thinkers and doers who tell stories, share wisdom, and challenge each other to have the best life possible inside and outside the office. Welcome to your Warrior Conversation. The warrior this week is Lauren Jensen, a returning guest at Warriors at Work. She's a dear friend, a colleague of 10 plus years, an executive, a mom, a wife, a friend, an uber team builder, a solutions finder. There is literally nothing that Lauren can't figure out, and she does it with her own unique style and so much love. Hello, my beautiful, beautiful friend, Lauren Jensen. So excited to hear your answer. When I say to you, what does gratitude mean to you when you think about 2022? What comes up?
Yeah. Well, thank you for asking tough questions as always, but make everyone sort of reflect for themselves, hopefully. I did give this a lot of thought. And the first thing that came to mind, which I will tell you for the previous 40 something, years of my life was something I took for granted, is health. I am so grateful for health because I was one of the few people who went 2.5 years avoiding that COVID positive outcome. I just don't know how. I was, going about my business like everyone else. And in the end of August, beginning of September, my family and I, we experienced the thing that so many families and professionals have been impacted. And I really realized how grateful I have been and how much I took that for granted, because despite being very empathetic to people who, had it maybe even multiple times, I just didn't realize the extent with which, when you already have a pretty fragile and chaotic lifestyle, that outcome just changes everything for your family and your professional life in that moment, because you have to start immediately thinking of what all the rules are and things that you just weren't even paying attention to, even if you really feel like, oh, I just have flu-like symptoms or I just have a cold. So enormously grateful in retrospect for my health in a way that never really hit my radar before, because the complexity and the implications now are so much bigger.
I every day express gratitude for health and well-being.
Yeah, you've always been about it, and it's something that I'm like later to the party on, because I just didn't have anything that kind of gave me that wake up call,
Yeah, and what's interesting about that gratitude is I also feel really loving and compassionate when I'm talking with anybody who doesn't have that in that current moment. Think about all the
Yes.
people we mutually know that are struggling with their health for a variety of reasons. And a lot of times they'll even bring me to tears.
Mhm.
How I just wish for their health and well-being, and I keep trying to see them well, the same way I'm trying to see myself well. And I think it's really, really important what you just said.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
also
I mean,
curious.
I think the other thing that in terms of just it brings to mind like that feeling of trying to achieve some kind of peace in such a chaotic
Mm.
environment. And then when you are able to have those moments or figure out that that's something you're really grateful for and therefore it matters and therefore you need to make time to have some degree of peace. And
Mm.
I've had a few moments of that in retrospect this year. And then exactly like you're saying, I want that then for all of the other people in my, ecosystem that are struggling or having those challenges. It's really easy to like say, you need to carve out time for yourself. You need to put the
Yes.
oxygen mask on yourself. And it's so hard to do and it's super hard to watch people struggling. But I think sometimes you gotta learn these things the hard way too.
Yes. Which leads me to my next question because, as you know, I'm a huge believer in learning through the challenge, learning through the struggles. It's definitely not all rainbows and unicorns and ice cream cones in the world of business, although that would be fabulous if it was. But honestly, like I just am fascinated to hear stories of struggle and how we fall forward. So
Mhm.
tell me what comes up for you when you think of 2022.
As a very clumsy person, I love the concept of falling forward because I have many memories of doing that in, personally and professionally. But interestingly enough, in our environment at work, we created an award, where we have categorized it as fail forward. And FAIL is an acronym for us that stands for first attempt in learning. And I love it because the notion is to remind everyone that, you have to take risks. You are going to, sometimes kill it and it'll work out great. And sometimes you'll have to learn, grow, take the feedback or take the experience and figure out what you're going to do differently next time. And we realized in our culture at work, we needed to award that. We needed to, because we had so many people that were just trying to be very high performing and execute so precisely that it was holding them back, this concept of experimentation or, well, what happens if it doesn't work out? I mean, I say this even related to our customers. I often believe that it isn't so much avoiding every complexity or an unfavorable customer experience. It's like how you recover from it that
Yeah.
drives a lot of loyalty. So we've had a great, a really great impact from introducing that award at work. So I love this question for that reason.
What is the ceremony around that fail forward like? So it's like a bunch of people in a room and everyone's like, "Yay, you failed!" Like, so tell me more about that.
Yes, it actually is like that. We do it in it's just like our other awards where you might have achieved a particularly like material outcome financially or for a customer impact. We do it in our town hall meetings. You get the same, type of like points towards gift cards and the entire community of people in our organization. So thousands of people are, applauding that outcome and it is highlighted the same as any of the other outcomes. And, it took a little while, honestly, for people to lean
Mm.
into feeling comfortable nominating or being nominated for those things. But we had a few really awesome trailblazers and a lot of success from one of my colleagues who had implemented this in another company. And we love it. We see so much more traction. It's sort of like also the concept of what do you stop doing in order to figure out what do you start
Right.
doing? If you can focus on sort of that the flip the script, you can get some really, really interesting progress. And we've seen a big change in our culture. In fact, our employee results for engagement went up 20 points this year.
You're kidding.
Yeah.
Because of that one award?
Not because of the one award, but I would say that is a big part of it. Like that's
Mm.
all the different overhaul that we've been doing in our culture to try to help folks ideate and experiment and lean into this kind of culture of, you would want to fail fast because it's a lot cheaper and a lot less complex than if you have a multi-year project and you realize at the very end, oh, there's a
Mhm.
big miss. So we're trying to really drive that through many different channels of engagement, but the award is a big contributor.
Such a progressive way to think of development, to think of evolution. Just imagine, like, the first few people like, "Yay, oh, you're the person who got that fail award. Great job." Like, it's
Yes.
it's so, like,
And
complete
we do,
opposite
I
of
would
how we're
say
programmed.
You're so right, because we have a very formal way that we review a lot of our progress, as many companies I'm sure do with projects. And we'll often say now when someone comes in and says like, that didn't really work out, but now we know that if we care for this regulatory thing, this is what we learned. So everyone's always focused on learning, their learning agenda, talking about what they did learn if it didn't work out. And we'll say as the senior leaders, that's a great fail award, so and so, nominate them for a fail award. So we're really encouraging it in a way that we're
Mm,
embracing versus having there be any kind of like negative connotation or shame associated with
that is such a big idea. Anybody
it.
that's watching this or listening to this is like, oh, yeah, that's a good one. All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
here's my last question.
Yeah.
I know so many people are talking to you, asking for your advice, for your counsel, for your perspective on things. I would love for you to take some learning from that fail forward
Yeah.
idea and put it into advice. So how would you advise somebody that's coming to you, let's say, probably the most common, I'm afraid if I do this wrong, or I suffer from perfectionism,
Yeah.
or fill in the blank. What would be a scenario that somebody would come to you, ask for your advice, and you could apply this learning?
So I thought a lot about this question, and trust me, there's a lot of fall forwards that I could anchor to, from a learning perspective. But I think the one that stands out the most to me this year, particularly, is I expanded my responsibility earlier this year, and what I realized is this concept of like what got you here won't get you there necessarily. And what had gotten me to where I am now is this sort of pleaser, perfectionist. And I was doing that not just managing up to my senior leaders, but even getting involved further down in my teams
Hmm.
and my leaders, and helping them and thinking that I'm like developing them in a positive way. But in reality, I was stifling their growth because I wasn't giving them the opportunity to really, fall forward and learn and grow and elevate. And so that was a real epiphany for me. I would say maybe 3 or 4 months into this year that I had to figure out because it was very foreign. That's not my DNA. Whether
Mm.
it's like momming personally, professionally, I just am there. I want to help. I want to improve. I want to be part of the solution. And so I realized, and I started to have this conversation with my team a little bit about feedback and how I was going to admit, like, I don't think I'm doing a great job of this. How can you give me some feedback? And so the coaching can kind of go both ways so that I'm struggling, and I think you might have good ideas and how you can help me. So that was a really important conversation several months into this year that has now helped all of us. First of all, they can now feel more vulnerable admitting things that they're struggling with, because I routinely try to do that too. And they're now in a position where everyone is able to sort of elevate because they know that it isn't a lack of confidence. That's not why I'm trying to get, overly involved. They understand more about my style, and I am exhibiting more trust and less involvement in their bodies of work. And so it's been a really important learning and outcome. And so I would just encourage others who feel like, they're struggling with how did their style really contribute as a strength, and
Hmm.
now it's feeling like more of a challenge or a weakness. Like, how do you get the right feedback to reframe it for yourself so you can really, take that and build from it and learn from it?
What's so cool about that is so you demonstrated the courage to say, I don't have all the answers. I'm not doing this perfect. I know that about myself. And I want to learn and grow the same way I'm going to expect you all to be aware and are willing to receive a different perspective on what they're doing and how they're doing it. I love that you had the courage and the awareness to do that.
I
That
mean,
is so
thank you for
smart.
saying that. I wish that was the attribution, but I really think I was stuck.
Mm,
And I was stuck and I didn't know, and it was so uncomfortable. And I think that's when the most growth usually occurs. And it's one of those things where everyone can read it and hear it and see it in leadership books, but until you really experience it, you can't embrace that icky, like, I'm uncomfortable
oh yeah.
feeling in a way that it will result in growth. I think until you've experienced it a few times to know, like, that is the path to your next kind of journey.
Yeah. I love that. I thank you so much
Oh, it was
for
my
sharing
pleasure.
a little bit of your heart and your story here with me.
Always my pleasure. Thank you for asking.
Thank you for joining me for another episode of the Warriors at Work show. If you are interested in learning more about what we do at the Warriors at Work show and platform, be sure to go over to my website, Jeannie Coomber, and subscribe to my monthly Warrior Playbook newsletter. I share everything that I'm up to month by month, as well as some lessons and insights that I've learned. I'm also interested in hearing any feedback you have about this conversation or future topics. So reach out to me directly on jc@jeanniecoomber.com or on LinkedIn. Be sure to tell your friends and your colleagues about this Warriors at Work conversation. Subscribe, review, and rate us. It's the best way to get this message out into the world. Be well.